Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. Now, this morning we ask a question that should never be asked in any sane society. Is the pursuit of education becoming a life-threatening journey? Now, before you raise your eyebrow, somewhere along the Makurdi Otukpo road in Benue State, that question stopped being philosophical and became painful, a painful reality. 14 young Nigerian students, candidates, of course, dreamers, set out on what should have been a routine trip to sit for the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. A rite of passage, right? A familiar Nigerian story. Early morning travel, documents carefully tucked away, maybe a parent whispering few prayers at the motor park. But instead of exam halls, they were met with gunmen. Our reports show that armed attackers intercepted their vehicle and marched them into the forest. These were not politicians, not soldiers, not billionaires, just students, young people whose only crime was daring to believe that education could change their lives. I'll pause for a minute. In what country does carrying a jam slip become a risk factor? Because this is no longer an isolated incident. From the mass abduction in Niger State to recurrent attacks in North Central region, schools and students have quietly become soft targets. High visibility, low resistance, maximum emotional impact. And yet, in the same news cycle, we are told that over 700 repentant terrorists are being prepared for reintegration into society under Operation Safe Corridor. Think about that contrast. On one side, students abducted on their way to exams. On the other, former fighters are being rehabilitated, reabsorbed, and in some cases, resettled. Now, this, of course, raises an uncomfortable question, not about mercy, but about priorities. Are we now protecting those who chose education as much as we are rehabilitating those who once rejected it? And then, almost like satire writing itself, the political theater continues. Headlines scream reactions like Tinubu took over from himself, echoing the cyclical nature of governance debates in Nigeria, where leadership changes, yet insecurity often feels stubbornly familiar. So while politicians argue semantics, ordinary Nigerians are calculating survival. A parent is no longer just asking, what will my child study? They are also asking, will my child return? And that changes everything. Because education, by its very definition, is supposed to be society's safest investment. The one place where hope outweighs fear, where classrooms replace chaos. But what happens when the road to that classroom is lined with uncertainty? When going to write exams starts to sound like taking a risk? Let's bring it home. Imagine a 17-year-old preparing for UTME, sleepless nights, past questions, dreams of becoming a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, maybe even the next tech founder. Now, imagine that same teenager calculating the safest route to the exam center, or wondering if they should even go at all. Now, that is not just a security failure. That is a psychological shift. And when a nation reaches a point where ambition must negotiate with fear, the cost is far greater than any ransom ever paid. Because the real loss is not just the students abducted. There's the thousands watching and quietly reconsidering their dreams. So is the pursuit of education life-threatening in Nigeria? It shouldn't be. But in today's Nigeria, for too many families, it is no longer a rhetorical question. It is a lived reality. And until a student can travel to write an exam with the same certainty as they go to the kitchen to get a plate of food, we are not just failing our education system, we are failing the very idea of a future. Once again, welcome to Breakfast Extra. My name is Chiwetel, and of course, I'm not alone. I have the very beautiful Queen here with me. Hello, Queen. How are you?
Morning. That was an amazing monologue. I feel bad for these kids having to go all the way and then being in danger just to write an examination. This is something that we're talking about, and it's really, really sad. But that was an amazing monologue. Well done, Chiwetel.
Thank you very much. All right, of course, we've given you the monologue. We have a lot to unfold on the show today, so let's hit the road.
Come over. Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra here on News Central. I am, of course, Queen Celestine. And today on the show, we begin with Nigeria's bold push for food security as the federal government partners with China on a proposed $900 million poultry deal aimed at boosting egg production to about 6 million daily. While the initiative promises scale and efficiency, questions remain around its impact on local farmers and long-term sustainability in Nigeria's agricultural sector. And away from that, we'll also take a look at Benue State, where a new development drive is underway. The government has launched a quarry plant and deployed trucks and e-tricycles to strengthen infrastructure and improve livelihoods. But beyond the announcements, attention is on how quickly these interventions will translate into real economic relief for citizens. In the Weekend Warrior segment, we celebrate Tunde Onakoya, founder of Chess in Slums Africa, who has made history as the first African to win the Linda Ramos Youth Social Impact Award. In the third hour, we shift focus to security concerns in Benue State, where gunmen abducted passengers along a major road. This incident has once again raised alarm over the safety of commuters and the persistence of insecurity in parts of the country. We also examine Nigeria's counterinsurgency strategy as over 700 repentant ex-combatants are set for reintegration into society. While the program aims to promote peace and de-radicalization, it stirs debate around justice, safety, and community acceptance. It's a packed and important show today. But first, we'll bring you the dailies. I was about to say Chiwetel.
No, it's Chiwetel here, not Mazina. Not Mazina, not at all.
Well, that is the good thing about Breakfast Extra. So are we ready to do the dailies?
Of course we are. Let's get it done.
Let us. Okay, I think before the dailies, let's go on a quick break before we start this conversation, shall we? Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Breakfast Extra. I know you're waiting for the dailies, but before we do that, we have a big report. Nigeria's push for food security is taking a bold turn as the federal government partners with China on a proposed $900 million poultry project aimed at producing up to 6 million eggs daily. The initiative is designed to tackle Nigeria's protein deficit, reduce the cost of eggs, and boost large-scale agricultural production across the country. The plan includes 6 integrated poultry farms across the 6 geopolitical zones, each expected to produce about 1 million eggs daily, supported by modern technology, feed production systems, and large-scale farming infrastructure.
But while the government sees this as a game changer for food production and economic growth, not everyone is convinced. Local poultry farmers are already raising concerns, warning that the deal could undermine indigenous producers if not properly structured, especially at a time when the sector is already facing rising costs and declining purchasing power. Let's take a quick look at this report filed by our business correspondent, Joanna.
Poultry farmers in Nigeria are opposing the proposed $900 million poultry partnership between the federal government and China.
If they focus on us, we don't need China. We are all capable, all the poultry farmers, we are capable to supply what Nigeria needs and even export.
They warn it may hurt local producers and urge support for domestic capacity instead of foreign-backed competition.
It's a bit disheartening because I work in the grassroots, and I know the potentials of these people if they could be empowered and if we could help them scale.
We hear all the news there. We were hearing from the television. They have helped farmers. They have done this, empowers women. Nothing is getting to us. And when we make any move to go for such program, at the end of the day, nothing comes down. We just waste our time going and coming. Government are trying on that, but it's not getting to us. The real farmers is not getting to us. We don't know what is happening. Government should assist us so that we can put some facilities in place so that the work will be easy for us. If they can help us to subsidize the feed,
They should support us, encourage indigenous producers of feeds so that the cost of production will be lower. And then we who are the end user, the cost of buying will be less in order to help us with our own business. Like now, I'm looking for finance to increase my beds. If I increase, my income will be higher. Then the cost of production will be reduced because on every one bag right now with the petrol issue, for one bag is 500 naira to carry one bag. It's 500 naira. So, but if I have more, if these pens are filled and I buy maybe 20, maybe they will reduce the price. But if you are going to carry one bag, though it's 500 from where they're taking it, but to bring it down to my farm, they will not take anything less than 3,000.
The concern comes as the price of pullets, young hens produced for laying eggs, jumps 67% in 3 months, raising fears of an egg shortage.
So many farmers cannot stock pullets again. Now it's 3,250 naira a pullet. That increase in price, it started. It started 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, every year is always increasing. Farmers are going through a lot so that we can produce more to the community. People need eggs, but there is no egg. People have come to ask me for egg. I said I don't have, because I have to give to those I promise I want to give.
The federal government insists the deal will boost large-scale production, targeting 6 million eggs daily. In Lagos, for News Central, Joanna Mustafa.
So the big question is, will this partnership strengthen Nigeria's agricultural sector or create new challenges for local farmers? Joining us now is African farmer Makurdi, a farmer and food security expert. Mr. Makurdi, or which would you prefer?
African farmer is fine.
African farmer.
Yeah.
I know we'll have to come back to how you got that name, but I did not know that we're running out of eggs in Nigeria.
Oh, that started a few years ago.
That started a few years ago. So just run us through, just give us a big picture. Now the government is talking about collaboration with China. How is that significant to our poultry issue here in Nigeria and our food security goal?
I think the concept of the idea, the intention is good. But if we go back 30 years, up to 40, that have been in this value chain, almost everything that involves government that has a vanity metrics attached to it. When I say vanity metrics, the biggest, the first, anything with those two tags has not worked in 40 years. And I don't see this also really finding full expression as regards the implementation, because timing, a lot of egg production is the end, okay? A lot of work that needs to go into it, the industry engagements, I've not seen all those. It was just a beautiful idea, well-intended, that may come back to be the same old thing. I can name 5 to 10 on this program now.
Right.
That governments, at states, at federal, at tri. It doesn't mean that this may not be an exception. But if we look at data and trends and how they conceived those ones that did not work and how they conceived this, how they announced it, everything follows the trend in the last 4 decades.
Wow.
So based on that data, we can relatively predict.
So I think my next question would be, I know that in Nigeria, we're so quick to have a committee. We have a board, we have this, we have that. So I want to believe that the farmers have that. So would it be that it was the committee or the board of the farmers that told the government we need this and the government is collaborating, or the government is acting on its own? Because it feels like the farmers are not even aware, because it's not getting to them at the end of the day. Because watching the reports, the lady's like, we're seeing that the government is saying we're helping farmers, but it's not getting to us. So what is the issue in that?
So first thing first is, I've had a challenge with some, not all policymakers over the years. And I've been studying this. I've been in the sector, 4 decades now. I'm young, but I'm a bridge between the old and the new. I started in 1986, putting my first money in it. So you see, there's no synergy. When I talk about synergy, there's no synergy. Synergy in the sense that this, if you see, it's Nigeria-China consortium, not Ministry of Agric, Ministry of Livestock, and co. If I am so certain that if the Ministry of Livestock and Ministry of Agric were brought on the table to design this thing, they would have discouraged this design. They would have gone more into cascading into cottage, support the existing system to scale, support the existing companies, give them facilities, feed millers, farmers, logistics. It's a whole value chain. So the ministries of livestock and agric would have advised otherwise. I can put a lot on the line for that. We have professionals there. We don't use them. So Nigeria-China consortium is somebody new who just got a new office, who has consulting background, who means well for the country, well-intentioned, but implementation will have issues. I can talk about Olam when they started this poultry. I came on national TV and I said, this will not work. Give it 8 months. True to type, 8 months, issues. Now, almost shut down. Same poultry. When you come to disrupt agribusiness, we talk about food security. Thinking we know it, we apply agricultural mindset to food security. Agriculture just deals with a lot with production and some factors. Food security talks about consumer, talks about input, talks about before you implement and after you implement. It's an ecosystem. We are not always planning for the ecosystem. Check the reports. There was nothing from the announcement. There was nothing about logistics. So they want to produce the eggs now. How does it move? How does it move? When it doesn't move, all that investment will go down. The Zimbabwe farmers we brought to Kwara, name it. It's too many. Anything, the massive tomato factories in the north, I've visited, been part of strategy sessions. This design is almost the same as all these big ones that has not worked. So cascading it down to supporting the value chain is what is important. So the unemployed youths, we can't fully talk about automation when we have millions of youths. This year, 2.5 million youths wrote JAM. And they are not going to get into school. What do we do with them? That's when we are talking about food security. Okay, do we set up technical institutions? Do we support the existing technical institutions so that these people can rear the chicken? Maybe scale the people who are doing 1,000 to 5,000? Bring facilities to BOI? It is not well thought through. At this stage in my career, I will not mince words again. The president means well. I can say that. All presidents we have had in Nigeria, they all mean well. Some ministers, I can speak for the Minister of Agriculture, Senator Kerry, because he's full of collaboration. But at subnational levels and parastatals, they are not aligning together. And we are going to pay for it. When they start the implementation, I'm not negative now, I'm just being real. Give it 7 months. Okay. Give it 7 months. The challenges will show.
The same 7 months or the 8 months you gave.
It's a giving.
The Olam thing.
It's a giving.
but let's look at what the government is targeting now.
Yes.
6 million eggs daily.
Yes.
From your expertise, how realistic is this projection, and what would it take to actually achieve this?
So because they are bringing in the Chinese, the infrastructure will be done. They have track record of delivering. They will put in everything that needs. The thing will be done as at when due the timing. However, the conversation around the land, the communities, the land factor, you hear 10,000 hectares will be allocated. Where are they going to get it in this short period? The communities will revolt. There will be issues. So that's why I said it's a good design.
But Nigeria seems to have a lot of land.
We have the land.
Lying fallow.
The land tenure system does not support this massive. It supports cottage. It supports, small and medium. So every time, and I stand to be corrected again, because if history is not known, we will repeat the negatives. Every time we take land forcefully from communities, those projects don't work. And, because many people don't know this, take for instance, the Zimbabwe farmers. The seeds, they will get 15 tons in Zimbabwe. They were getting 3 tons in Nigeria. The climate is different. Things are different. There's a lot of assumption. And let me say this, we don't talk about, there's some aspect of agriculture we don't talk about.
Yeah.
The rural people will go diabolical.
Okay.
The crops will grow, the chicken will grow, and they may have unfortunate incidences. These are things people don't talk on media.
And that will be because they feel left out?
Yes. The Zimbabwe farmer cattle were not producing milk enough. So, you see, when we are designing things, we need research beyond internet, beyond good intentions. This is a trend in Nigeria. However, this might be different, because the Chinese also understand the Nigerian factor.
Yes.
And I'm talking about corruption now. The Nigerian, they understand it. But bottom line is that sustainability. From 7 months, they'll begin to identify the issues. But sustainability after the 3 years will be an issue. They transfer. Who will they transfer it to? Private sector. Which private sector? They will destroy our soya value chain. It will affect our maize value chain. Why don't they start with empowering? When I mean empowering, I don't mean giveaway. Why don't they start with supporting farmers with corn and soya? This is what will happen, and I hope 1-2 years from now, when the project is implemented, this video will be replayed. Our corn value chain will be negatively affected. Already, the farmers are in debt, and they are crying the last 2 years. Okay, now what will happen is when they discover that we cannot produce with climate change, no country in the world has a grip on climate change.
Right.
Now, so when climate change shows up and you want to grow your maize and soya and the climate does not support and you cannot use irrigation, no country in the world uses irrigation to produce enough corn and soya. It's the rain. When that happens, what will happen eventually is that they'll begin to import feed from China. And as they import feed from China, our farmers will not be able to sell their corn, will not be able to sell their soya. I actually hope and sincerely think that the federal government should review this as regards implementation, vis-a-vis actual realities, vis-a-vis the political elections coming. This is going to be very big and a game changer.
So now, in terms of the $900 million that, of course, everything looks good in picture. But if we were to say, okay, we're going to help the local farmers and, figure out how to help Nigeria, because we're also dealing with flood, so we're losing a lot of, lands for farming. How much realistically do you think we'll need? Are we going to need up to the $900 million?
Well, poultry, the whole value chain that they've spoken about, 900 million is not a fantastic amount for what they want to do. That's the truth, okay? Because these are infrastructure. When you talk about like grandparent stock, globally, they are just a handful. You can count the number of people producing that grandparent stock. Even in Nigeria, the companies that have the grandparent stocks are not up to 4. Functional, 2.5. Okay, so it's always small. The investment is like a 30-year. You can't just bring equipment that's for 5-10 years. No, it's long-term with research going on. So I don't have an issue with the figure. We would actually need the money.
Right.
The 900 million for me, it's not enough. 1 million eggs. West Africa needs egg from us. So when and you see, there's a myopic planning that happens also, which is when we're talking, we look at Nigeria. Every time we plan to produce food to feed Nigerians, we fail woefully. Because food from West Africa depends on Nigeria for food. We have porous borders. So we should always be planning for West Africa. When we plan for West Africa, we will feed Nigerians. When we plan for Nigerians, we won't be able to feed Nigerians because the food, because of porous borders, will move to West Africa. So 900 million is not the issue. Right. The implementation of it is the issue. Then again, how many Nigerians, why should it be a government that would be funding? Why don't you get private sector investors from Nigeria? Very important. See, this poultry is not a big deal, but we are repeating cycles of mistakes. Why does Nigeria not have oil palm oil, rather? Because in the 1960s, when we developed those varieties, Nigeria went into massive equipments. Malaysia, that they both collaborated on the project, went into cottage. So 2-3 decades later, they are developed cottage. So if a major equipment has a fault now, they're not importing the parts from Germany, from Russia. The people could fabricate. That is the only reason why Malaysia became #1 and Nigeria is going down the ladder. Every time we go for big as against sustainable cottage, we miss it. So 1960 mistake, or 1960s, we are repeating it till date.
So beyond,
and it's frustrating for many of us now.
Beyond production now,
yes.
Affordability is something that's also a concern. Do you think, with increased supply will actually translate to perhaps a lower cost of eggs?
Definitely. Increased supply would mean that the prices of eggs would drop.
Yeah.
But also understand, agribusiness, you cannot fully plan and you should always be planning that there might be a challenge. Because what is going to happen now is that the moment they kick off that project and the news filter that they start clearing the lands, many poultry farmers, small and medium and large, will reduce their risk. So anybody doing 100,000 chicken will cut it down by 50%, because when those eggs come, they are doing broiler also, it will affect the whole sector. Now, if something now happens, because what's likely to happen? The Chinese will not, see, there's what is called foreign policy. International food politics, regional food politics, local food politics. Now, the international food politics, the Chinese will not go and be investing in Netherlands or Europe grandparent stock. They will bring their grandparent stock. Before we should allow that in from a food security perspective, it should be about 2-3 years of trying different things. Now that has not been done. So if there's a genetic mutation, if something happens in, let's say, Kebbi State, or Kirikasama in Jigawa State, or Maleri in Gombe State, how do we nip it at the bud? We don't have the veterinary services. So it is beyond just this. We are likely to create, if there's a strain of disease like COVID, a strain of disease that happens, we're likely to wipe out everything. That may not happen, but it's a possibility. So why don't we develop the infrastructure before we bring this project? If we develop that infrastructure, things will work. But I'm really concerned about this because it will affect the poultry farmers, it will affect the maize farmers, it will affect the rural people that the government is trying to support. Because the people buying eggs are rural people.
Right. So I think now the question now will be, we're not sure exactly because they've not given us a full plan on how they plan to
I'm telling you from a food security perspective, I'm a trained foreign policy expert on agriculture. Right. China will bring in their parent stock.
So let's assume that, when this whole thing begins, and if they don't bring our local farmers, the best way now will be to involve our local farmers into this. So what happens if they don't involve our local farmers and then they just go ahead with this? If it fails, without doing the right step. Like you said, the egg is just the end product. There's so many things. There's logistic, a lot of things that they need to put in place. If all those things don't happen, what is Nigeria going to see?
Nigerians would have a major protein deficit because poultry is the egg, is the closest to protein security, because it's cheaper to buy egg than even buy chicken. We can't buy cows. It's expensive.
Yes.
So Nigerians will pay for that heavily. The value chain will be totally destroyed. When I mean totally destroyed, see, I'm even now talking about mental health. Check the mental health of the average farmer, poultry or crops. They are having mental health issues. Many people are depressed. Many people are dying, but nobody picks these things up because they are in rural suburbs. So mental health of farmers is a major concern for me. I've gone through these things. I'm a living proof. A chunk, 70 to 80% of the farmers in Nigeria are either in debt, getting out of debt, or about to get into debt. That's the reality. So if it is not well managed, many youths are coming in, many youths who are, well, we've been trying to get youths in. Many of them are in. Many of them will rush out right now if we don't manage this properly. So that's why I said government needs to pay attention to review this implementation and timing.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, African farmer Mogashi, for having this conversation with us. It's been quite an insightful one.
Thank you for having me.
I did not know that we did not have eggs, but yes. Viewers, I'm sure that you can see and hear the things that's happening in Nigeria. So it's not just what you see on social media. There are deeper issues that we need to start talking about. Let's go on a quick break. When we return, we have other conversations. Stay with us. Good morning. Of course, usually you see me dancing while we're doing the strips, but today I will be leading and doing the strips with Chiwete. Let's see the first strip. Well, here, this is a very funny picture. What we can see here is the Nigerian flag, and right at the top it says 3.3 trillion naira recently approved for light. We are still in darkness. And of course, we see the cartoon that looks like our president because of the cap says there is light at the end of the tunnel, holding a candle. And this is, of course, by Okpara. Basically, this is just saying that Nigerians are seeing that the government is putting a lot of money into light, but there is no light. We're constantly arguing about when are we going to have the basics, which is light. And of course, we see all the money, and then even in the tunnel, it's dark. But there's an assurance that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Chiwete, what's your input on this?
It's quite interesting. I mean, weeks ago, I made a monologue on Nigerian power sector, and I think right now it's almost as though we are on our own. I mean, with this strip, it just tells us what it is, because right now, Aso Rock has moved on, right, from the national grid. So the president can't even have an idea of what we're facing as Nigerians when it comes to the power sector. So at the end of the day, I think this just implies that we might just be on our own, because, I mean, the president who's supposed to at least give us some level of hope is saying there's light at the end of the tunnel. Okay.
If you remember, they talked about the 3.3 trillion being a bailout, but we found out that that is money for gas that we've accumulated since 1999. Food for thought, guys. Let's check out the next strip. I wish this came at the end, but I'm going to say it. Buhari is me. Buhari is myself. What we are seeing here is a citizen who has patches and stitches, and how Buhari left the citizens after 8 years. Actually, right above, on the floor. Or how Tinubu left us after 3 years. He has, alopecia. There are flies all over. Literally, he's dead. His ribs are out. So basically, Nigerians are saying we are dead from the bills, from the taxes, from everything. Everything has gone up. Plus, the issue is Strait of Hormuz. Nigerians are wailing, like, how did we get here? Can we move back 8 years and just manage the floor? But now it's like we've been digging our own grave, and, well, They did. Chinwete.
This is sad. I mean, like you said, if this had come at the last, as the last trip, perhaps, you know, we'd have had a lot to talk about. But then again, this is actually timely, looking at the fact that the president has said, hey, Buhari is me, I am him. So what that means is that we have been facing, but it's funny because when Buhari was the figure now that we knew, 8 years wasn't as bad as 3 years of Tinubu. So it looks as though we're seeing someone with a mask all this while, and now he has taken off the mask and we can see the real face of the person. Maybe that's why the Shege, in quote, is on Pro Max right now than it was under Buhari.
Well, the thing about the picture is you can see that in the Buhari regime, there's a bit of, green grass, a bit of hope out there, fresh air. But here it is dry. It's
a lot for Nigerians. So I think we've taken a whole lot in a short period of time.
I think with this cartoon.
And that's why it's really, really sad. In 3 years, it's never been this bad. And right now, it's funny how in 3 years we're missing Buhari. It's not good at all.
May his soul rest in peace. And of course, it's something that Nigerians are really complaining. And hopefully, it's been taken into consideration and we don't get that bad. And of course, we'll see what happens after the next election. Let's see our next strip. This one is tough. As you can see here, we have the SMEs, basically the small businesses and, the medium businesses, and what they are carrying is a basket or basin with energy cost, which is really huge, and other costs, and navigating through taxes, of course, rocks. And we can see that a lot of entrepreneurs lately have been complaining because electricity has been an issue on how, they can render services and do what they need to do to survive. There's a lot of pressure on entrepreneurs in Nigeria. It's like, how do we navigate through this? They're holding on to their dear lives. Even the stick doesn't look like it's supporting them at all, and it feels like there'll be more cost coming. So this just depicts that, Nigerians are stressed. And of course, it's Otukpo that did this amazing cartoon piece. And it's really direct. It's been a pressure for, entrepreneurs in Nigeria. Chibate, what's your take on this?
This is totally a perfect interpretation, rather, of what it is to be a business owner in Nigeria. I remember somebody cracking a joke the other day and said, if you think that you want to leave your 9 to 5, and do business because of peace of mind, then you have to think about it again. And this right here just tells you why. Because in Nigeria, it's crazy because you're paying for your, what we call your light bill, right? You're paying for that. Light is not consistent. Because of business, you need to now have an alternative, which is either solar, which is expensive, or even if you're going to buy a generator right now, we know the cost of generators right now is not cheap. And you're going to even buy fuel. We know the price of fuel right now is not cheap either. So it's looking like a 360-degree, pressure on business owners. So there's the taxes now, of course, has come to stay in 2026. High cost of, energy. You're importing, so the naira itself is not helping matters. So you're having more to import. You have to pay more because of foreign exchange. So it's like nothing is really working for any business owner in Nigeria right now.
Well, I know that we'll continue the strips, but let's go on a short break. When we return, the strips continue. Stay with us. You need to see me dancing behind the scenes. Let's see our next strip. This is by Okpara, of course, and Business Day. And we see, of course, the cartoon that depicts our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying, once I find loan, they will know I'm a good keeper. And we see all these balls gunning at him. Inflation, bad roads, power failure, poverty, debt, insecurity, flood, job losses, corruption. It is a whole lot of situation coming at him. And he's like, don't worry, I got you. I'm focusing on the one ball, which is loan. And Nigerians are like, there's so many things that's happening to us right now. Just catch one and focus on it first. Everything is coming at you, but you're like, no, I'm looking for the ball that we can't see. Let's get loan. Chiwete, which one should we catch first? Which one should he catch first?
I think what should even happen first off is Tinubu asking for loan. I don't think that's what's been working. Loans, really? We've been having loans from time immemorial, and we don't see it happen. We just hear or read about it in the news. What will make him a better goalkeeper, from what we've seen, is rice. Rice has been doing it. Everything, give them rice. We've complained about all the balls that are played at him right now. We keep complaining about them, but they keep giving us rice. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's loan he needs. He needs more rice, more bags of rice to sort out all this problem.
I want to believe that you're being sarcastic, but...
No, but seriously, because we've been having the loans, what has happened?
So basically, what this is depicting is the fact that we are not focusing on how to navigate the problem and figure out and make planning on how to fix the basics, you know. But of course, we are just hoping that 2027 gives us something different and, you know, he will catch a ball. Let's move on to the next strip. And right here, of course, Business Day, Sema Sokara says, we see a huge dog, I'm not sure what breed, enjoying meatballs and, you know, eye-neck breed, clearly. And with,
what's the other breed? That
food,
other small dog, what's that?
That's the street dog, the native dog that we see on the street. But it's just that it's blue here. We see the electoral fund with a lot of meatballs and food. And of course, our dear president, as a cartoon, saying, don't worry, I will make sure you start using the plates once I'm re-elected. And of course, that is greed and electricity funds. This is the same thing we've been talking about. And of course, we see the amount of money that was being budgeted for elections. And we don't see anything in light. They're saying that, you know, electricity we're owing and the grid is always collapsing, always fainting. You know, protein deficit is what's happening to the electricity. And we know that in Aso Rock, there is a solar panel. You know, he has removed himself from the grid and we're collapsing with the grid while election is taking a huge chunk of the funds that we are collecting as loans. And, you know, it's something that Nigerians are like, what is going on here? Maybe we should just go to Aso Rock. We should all move to Aso Rock and leave the grid for, you know, the yet unborn. Chiwete, what's your take?
Honestly, it just tells us this is a proper depiction of how an average Nigerian politician, you know, how they mostly act. Once they get elected, they focus more on getting re-elected as opposed to actually focusing on governance. We've been talking about re-election for the past 2 years. In a 4-year term, 2 years, we've been talking about re-election, what's going to happen, who's going to go next, opposition, INEC, and all of that. So I think this just tells us how Nigerian politicians behave. Once they get into power, they're working on getting re-elected as opposed to focusing on true governance. That's just what we see right there. And that just tells you what our priorities are when it comes to our politicians.
Well, I think we have one more strip to go. Let's see and finalize this. $6 billion loan by NAS. NAS approved $6 billion loan, I beg your pardon. And we can see that the arrow is going to 2027. Say, hey, my people, relax. Relax. And some people are saying, give us the money. And we are wondering, where is this money going to? Of course, elections again is 2027. And this is just saying that we are losing focus. What is happening to Nigeria? Why is, you know, the approval going to things that people are wondering, does this really matter now? And by this side, it says, that's in the land, though. Mini loan don't show, while other balls are gunning to the goalpost. And, you know, I have no words. Chiwete.
It's really a sad situation for Nigeria when it comes to politics. The National Assembly, who should at least try and check the president in terms of all these borrowings, and can't even do anything right now. The other day, Akpabio was singing the praise of the president and was saying that the whole killings happening now and kidnapping in Nigeria right now would end once election is over. So it even tells you where their mind is. It doesn't look like they want to solve any problem right now. They just want to get their own part of the cake and move on. That's just what it means right there. And you can see it being depicted in this particular cartoon where they are saying, I beg, bring my own share. You can see the hands. I mean, look at the number of lawmakers that moved to the APC. There they are. There you have it. It's right there. It tells, it explains everything. Why it was so quick for them to approve this particular loan. So quick. And you ask yourself why. Of course, elections are coming. There it is.
Let me stretch my hand because 2027 is not far away. But this, if you look at all the strips that we've done, is saying one thing, is asking one question. Where is our focus? This is supposed to be a democracy where we're being governed by people that would choose to do the right thing. But now the question is, are they doing the right thing for us or they're doing the right thing for them? Of course, we've been talking about allegedly stomach infrastructure. Where is more of them first? We've seen, defections to where it feels like it benefits them more. The focus has moved. The basic things is what Nigerians are asking for. And again, I urge you to speak up. But thank you for watching and enjoying the Strip It Off. Now we're moving to more conversations. Stay with us.
Breakfast Extra here. It's time for the dailies. So kick-starting with The Nation. A big headline here says, 2027 anxiety as parties, aspirants intensify consultations on nomination. Binani Group dumps Adamawa ADC, blasts national leadership. A deputy Senate president gets opponent in Kano North. Okowa Nwoko sets for Delta North APC showdown. Now, if you look at the left corner of The Nation, of Sunday Nation, it says federal government bans importation of frozen poultry, cement, detergents, and others. Paracetamol, metronidazole, other medicines also affected. Okay. But on the right-hand corner of The Nation, the headline says Bola Ahmed ends APC defection talks over power sharing formula. There's a picture, of course, a collection of pictures here. It says state of the parties. You can see former faces, of course, of different politicians. Some of them are former Senate President, Senators Saraki. There's also Natasha's face in the Senator Natasha in there. There are also governors of Delta and Akwa Ibom, as well as former governor of Bayelsa State's face, all in there. Now, beside those collections of pictures is the headline, Fresh Uproar in PDP over Suspension Claim. And also there's another headline here in the Sunday Nation, Oil Theft, 586 arrested, 28 convicted in crackdown.
Wow.
Iran reimposes restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz. Wow, that was quite short. I mean, we were just screaming hallelujah the other day, and now they've imposed restrictions. I hope it doesn't affect us.
All we can do is hope that everything gets sorted out as soon as possible. I think let's move to the next paper, the Sunday Sun. Oh, we'll do the Guardian.
Okay, looks like we can't take the Guardian now, so we'll just move on to the Telegraph. The Telegraph, right? Okay, so let's do the Telegraph now. The major headline here says, National Assembly high turnover, 14 senators opt out over Guba ambitions. Appointments, political realignments, defections threaten others. Long-serving reps face battles to retain seat. The top left corner says PDP factions contest Ayahu's position as secretary. Remove his name from your portal, Turaki's group tells INEC. Another headline here says, Charlie boy, I pray to see better Nigeria in my lifetime. We all pray for that, Mr. Charlie boy. This one says, resignation, how Tuga left Foreign Affairs Ministry in frustration, says diplomat. He wants to run for Bauchi governorship, says presidency. Ex-ambassador may return to private business. Past APGA leaders traded with party since 2002, says Soludo. Nigeria, Morocco to deepen parliamentary partnership. 2027, Makinde in dilemma as allies flirt with APC's Ali. Criminals tap wellheads, use technology to beat security, says Tantita report.
If criminals are using technology to beat security, I wonder what's left, and we're still battling insurgency. Let's move now to the Sunday Sun. Right at the center, aftermath of convention, ADC still at crossroads. Legal hurdles, internal revolt, others threatening parties' chances ahead of 2027. APC, INEC presidency's actions against opposition parties may lead to anarchy, says Okoria. ADC caused own crisis, blaming Tinubu courts and INEC nonsensical. Abayomi says, and you find that on page 18 and 19. And under insecurity, we need state police, but government will abuse it, says Senator Arise on page 21. Says government's too powerful can determine outcomes of elections. That's a huge that's a huge thing to say. And besides, it says Miss Supranational, growing up in Lagos slum gave me real understanding of life. I'm sure that's a beauty queen gift. Right at the top, Oshunkeye at 70, I'll never retire from journalism. Speaking the truth, says support from wife, children gives him emotional balance. Shimete, I hope you have emotional balance for journalism here in Nigeria.
We try to.
We're proud of you. Tantita uncovers illegal export jetties, wooden boat networks shipping stolen crude offshore, says report. Benue kidnap. Police arrest 7 suspects in joint security operations. Kidnapped Benue travelers that's the UTME candidates in JAM, page 27. And of course, why Bola Mohammed's planned defection to APC collapsed. You find that in page 12 and 25. How Bauchi Governor, State PDP explore fresh political options. All this on the Sunday Sun.
The next daily we'll be checking out is the Sunday Tribune. The big headline here says, revealed how criminals use cleanup to steal crude oil. The Navy intensifies crackdown on oil thieves, uncovers 600 million naira illegal network. The left-hand corner of the Sunday Tribune says bandits abduct traditional ruler inquirer, cart away money. You see that on page 8 of the Sunday Tribune. Nigeria bleeding from within, Obi declares, expresses worry over rising corruption. I can read up on that in page 4 of the Sunday Tribune. On the left, just below left corner of the Sunday Tribune says Benue kidnap victims, not UTME candidates. JAM says, okay. Police arrest fake JAM coordinator in Anambra. Jakuta Steel will give Nigeria $14 billion annually, says Oyelaro Oyinka. You can find that on page 5. 2026 Hajj, first batches of pilgrims from Turkey, Pakistan, others arrive in Saudi Arabia. That's page 2. Governor Bala's planned defection to APC crashes. Bauchi PDP seeks alternative platform. You can get the details of that in page 4. A Guba battle in APC, Oyo, Nasarawa, others to face direct primaries. Power Minister Adilabu to declare intention. Tinubu keeps Lagos stakeholders guessing. All of these you can find in the Sunday Tribune.
Well, I think we'll have the last paper for our dailies. Let's move to the Sunday Punch. Right at the center, now expulsion battle. Zonal leaders plot PDP takeover. You find that on page 3. It's quite interesting. A lot of things are happening within the parties, and primaries are so close, and then elections. Legal tussle threatens Wike-led party structure. We're ready to end this crisis, says zonal chairman, and analysts warn expulsion will nullify key decisions. Quite interesting of all the things happening. Defections, sharing formula tears Bauchi government APC apart. Forest guards search for abducted Kwara monarch's wife. And again, army decries low southeast recruitment. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to want to join the force with the amount of insecurity that we have in Nigeria. What's your take on that?
Besides that, the remuneration. I mean, the other day we saw it where a soldier mentioned how much he earns, about 109,000 naira as a salary, and you get to get just one uniform. And every other thing you need, you probably go get it yourself. So it's when you hear things like this, you're wondering, is it really worth it? Knowing that once you're in the force, especially if you're in the front line of things, especially looking at the way Nigeria is now, there's a high chance you could lose your life.
No, yes, I agree with you. And before we finish that, it says 7 died, 60 injured in Ogun and Kano road crashes. And right at the top, Nigerians sleep at airport over Lufthansa strike. Rising telecoms attacks spark fear for 2027 polls. I feel like now everybody's just focused as to, okay, we need to make sure there are no loopholes. We're going to come out to vote. So if you're attacking everything, it's just questioning how, you know, we've seen a lot of promises. We've seen a lot of budgets. We've seen a lot of things, you know, oh, Nigeria, we're doing this, we're doing that, but we don't see the actual outcome. So now if they're talking about telecoms attack, meaning they're like, if we start having issues now, let them not say, oh, it's been having issues for a few years.
Exactly.
It's not because of elections. And I'm happy because I feel like Nigerians are waking up to,
we know this thing.
Demand their right and find out exactly what they need to find out.
I'd like to know, though, I saw you smile when you mentioned people sleeping in the hotel, the airports due to Lufthansa going on strike. Was your ex involved? Because that laugh was quite a wicked one.
You were telling
was your ex affected?
No.
Anyway.
What ex?
Anyway, it's all right. On that note, to wrap up the dailies, we've got a quick break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues.
Welcome back, and this is our big story. Nigeria's fiscal direction for the year has now been set as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signs the 68.32 trillion naira 2026 appropriation bill into law, the largest budget in the country's history. The spending plan reflects the government's ambition to drive economic growth, strengthen national security, and invest heavily in infrastructure and development.
Now, the budget also includes significant allocations across key areas, with about 32.2 trillion naira dedicated to capital expenditure, 15.8 trillion naira for debt servicing, and 4.799 trillion naira for statutory transfers. Now, with nearly half of the budget going into capital projects, the government says it is prioritizing long-term development and economic stability. At the same time, the president has approved an extension of the 2025 budget implementation to June 30. We're now joined by Femi Onakoya, the managing director of News Ananking Solutions Limited. Mr. Femi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
Mr. Femi, let's start with the big picture. 68.32 trillion naira budget for Nigeria's economic direction in 2026. How significant is this?
It's significant as a milestone because it's the largest budget we've had. And even though many people consider the sum pretty small compared to where we are, the fact that we are making increments in budgetary allocations is a very good sign in the right direction. It's something that we have been clamoring for a while, and we're glad that finally we're pushing ahead to that position.
Right. You say something we've been clamoring on. So would you say that this is, do you see this as ambitious? Is it necessary or is risky given our current economic realities?
I would say it's a necessity. It's not ambitious. If we're talking in terms of ambition, I would say it is not ambitious at all. And it is not risky. Yes, some may be alluding to it's not risky at all. It is a necessary position. We must understand, every time Nigerians talk about we want a better country, we want good roads, we want power, but all these things come at a cost. And financing those things, the sums are very, very huge. To solve the power problem in the country is going to take tens of billions of dollars. And, we do not have the remit for that. To transform the transportation system, we're going to have to spend transportation, water, healthcare. We're going to spend like $30 to $50 billion consecutively for like 30 years to have the kind of change, that we want. So this particular budget is significant for being high. right? But it's a necessity because we actually should be having higher budgetary allocations and trying to push the country to that area. We're quite in the deficit on a lot of areas.
Mr. Onakoya, when we look at the budget now, a major portion of the budget is allocated to capital expenditure. How impactful could this be for infrastructure and economic growth if implemented properly?
Well, it's expected that it will have significant impact. More details need to be shared with the public and, of course, communication carrying the people along on what the key areas are and what people stand to benefit from them so that they can leverage those opportunities. It's not enough to say going to revamp a road, for example. You also need to show how the road being serviceable impacts the local economy, how it's going to create jobs for people, how it's going to create easier access for real estate development, industrial development and stuff like that. So I think that it's important that we marry the situation and understand that for us to have the kind of country, kind of economy that we really love, we need to have it trickle down into significant positions that people can, relate to. The sum that's been allocated is small, and it also risks the challenge of the overlap from the 2025 statutory, allocation that most NDAs were unable to complete, projects that they had set up. So 70% of what's being allocated now is going to be given to them. We had some revenue constraint last year. We hope that the pulse will be better this year, and the signs look good. So hopefully we would have those significant impacts in the lives of people and in the living conditions.
So part of this allocation, we have debt servicing taking, significant share. How sustainable is Nigeria's, current fiscal strategy, especially with our rising borrowing?
Well, that's another thing that we also need to look at critically as a country and as educated people. One of the things I have been strongly against is the politicization of economics. We are not leveraged enough as a country. We are in real terms under borrowing, considering the distance between the gap between where we are, what our legacy issues are, and where we want to be. So we are really underfunded, and we do not have enough local revenue generation. Either it is by rent, receipts by oil and the rest of them, or by production to meet up. So how do you balance the book? You have to borrow. That's it's business 101. So I don't think we are leveraged well enough. We have enough position to actually be more leveraged. And debt servicing is very important. Your credit worthiness, your credit rating affects how people will look at you to borrow you money to support you to meet up some of your capital expenditure. If we do not service our debts, our credit rating will drop, and that will leave us overly dependent on maybe local, domestic borrowing or even the rents. And these positions will greatly hinder the growth of the economy. So I do not think it's an issue, it's a necessity. Our creditors need to know that we are up to par, we're willing to pay, and we meet our obligations as at when due. And we need to increase our, credit rating position so that we can access more funds, achieve the projects, the kind of life that we country can have.
All right, Mr. Onakoya, the government says this budget will strengthen security. In practical terms, how much difference can budgetary allocation make in, tackling insecurity?
Well, there are a number of direct and indirect implications to that. The direct implication is allocation to the military forces and our paramilitary forces. So if law enforcement is well funded, if the healthcare is taken care of, then we can say, okay, fine, they can actually give their best to the country. If we have the right ammunitions, we get the right weapons, the right support, put in place the right technology, all this come at a cost. Yes, it would help with, technology. We can use drone surveillance for large swaths of areas like the Sambisa forest and all those areas that are very underpopulated and give access to some of these criminal elements, to perform what they do. So it's really, it can have significant impact. The indirect impact, factors are things like having good roads, having excellent communication systems, uptime. In the newspaper this morning, some communication facilities were being attacked. These are some of the issues that we have, even though it's private sector, but if there is no access to the road, it makes law enforcement's job a lot, harder to implement. So it can have significant, direct and indirect impact on security improvements in the country.
Right. Mr. Femi, let's talk implementation. This is not the first time we're seeing budgets. And like you said, this is the biggest ever. And we've known that in the past, there's always conversation as to the budget or the money is not getting to the people that it's supposed to get to. And somehow something happens along the way and the project is forgotten. So now that people are having concerns about implementation, especially with the extension of the 2025 budget, does this raise any red flags in terms of our execution capacity?
It is actually of significant concern, and it's what I believe should worry everybody about everything else, beyond the sum of money and statutory allocation to debt servicing and recurrence and all, because implementation is the most important part. If implementation falls short, then everything that we're talking about, every projection, is just pipe dream, it's wishful thinking. The confidence that people can have in the government in terms of implementation of this position, it requires a bit more transparency and a bit more accountability. Also, the existing bureaucratic framework hinders the ease of implementation, the productive actualization of these projects. If it takes you for example, look at our budget framework. We start budget cycle around October 2nd. By the time, let's even assume that it's past, timely, by the time it comes out, then there's now the approval process to release the funds. This can take another extra 2 months. So we're already in a fresh year. You're already 2 months in, almost the first quarter gone before you get approvals, you get release of the funds. And, subsequent to that, you now have to do mobilization because you can't mobilize without approval. So you've already lost 4 months, at best, before you can even say you have started and moved to site or, started implementation, that you're ratifying contractors and all the rest of that. So the framework, our bureaucratic framework needs to be changed. We need a tweak in it to make it more efficient. I also think that we need to create a situation that we can have non-disruptive overlaps, right? A kind of convergence of project positions. So in that way, we can plan ahead and, plan funds ahead as well, so that by the time approvals, budgetary allocations are given, approvals are given, it just meets up at the point of implementation and then the time frame is reviewed. Because implementation, time delivery is actually very key, and that's been a key concern. That was what happened to the 2025 budget. MDAs did not have funds on time, and because of the shortage of funds, they couldn't implement. Now we're pushing that implementation, the implementation of those projects forward to June. And that means that even though we have a budgetary allocation for the year 2026, we're still going to run primarily, as has been advised, 70% of the statutory allocation to complete 2025 project, which means effectively we're starting 2026 project, a budget itself from July. And then within the next 3 months, we're going to have the same situation of a new budget for the coming year. Now, if we put all these together with the fact that next year is an election year, which means that campaign is going, the business of governance for most of the leaders will diminish in terms of value, and the business of campaigning for electoral position takes forefront. The civil service is divorced, on paper from the politics, but unfortunately, it is also entangled in the stuff. I mean, we have many members of the government, would, after a couple of years, I'm going to contest for governor, I'm going to contest for Senate, House of Rep, and all these, their personal ambition overlap with it. So the framework for implementation has to be looked at so that we can divorce some political, positions from it. We can automate processes, right? Use technology to automate processes and ensure seamless transition at each point. We can reduce key man risk in implementation processes such that personal ambitions and positions do not hinder the effective, implementation of the project so that we can deliver for the people. That is the primary concern for most of us who are watchers of the economy. It's that implementation, the framework, we need to tweak it so that we can continue other business while not neglecting the business of running the country, running the economy.
All right, so, Mr. Onakoya, year in, year out, right? When it comes to budget, we hear about the billions, we hear about the trillions, but then the question for most Nigerians is, how does this affect me, my daily living? For everyday Nigerians, what should they realistically expect? Will this budget translate into lower cost of living or economic conditions?
Okay, so the budget, despite the presentation by the president and the Senate, the budget is more of stabilization, right? We need to have the proper foundation as a country. For years, we've had shoddy, very, very shoddy, planning and implementation. And some of the policies that we had also at the time were very constraining on the economy. And now this administration has reduced some of them, and we are thankful, for those bottlenecks being taken away. However, that transition needs to be felt by people for it to be meaningful and impactful. So the first thing we should advise the public is really is a budget of stabilization. A lot of things happening, geopolitical concerns that directly and indirectly affect Nigeria. Thankfully, we have Dangote that's reduced our exposure to the recent, Middle East scuffle. But aside from that position, we have exposure for imports, and stabilizing the currency, for example, has reduced our exposure as a country. Even though price of things have gone up, things are stable. Things could be several levels worse than they actually are at the moment. If properly done, if the macroeconomics is working, if inflation is being managed properly, if our GDP growth projections is being managed properly, if security is managed properly, then we would have created a platform for future growth, for the foreign investors coming in, local investors putting in more financial, robust, environment and ecosystem. Right. It would help. It would translate to improve lives, improve living conditions in the long term. But the first thing we need, like someone said, is like you come upon an accident. The first thing you need at that point is to apply, first aid and try to stabilize the condition. Even when you take to the hospital before they start all the diagnosis and solving it, or you need to stabilize and keep the person, and that is the stage we are. Nigeria has moved out of some of the very dark periods. We're stabilizing, so if we can effectively manage this budget, we can stabilize, and that stabilization can lead to growth in different sectors: agriculture, communication, even the arts and sciences,
Well, Mr. Femi Onakoya, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a view of what this budget will be and what we should expect. We appreciate you joining us. Welcome back. Now to a story of impact, resilience, and global recognition. Nigerian chess master, coach, and social entrepreneur Tunde Onakoya has made history as the first African to receive the prestigious Lito Ramos Youth Award for Social Impact in Barcelona, Spain. The award recognizes young leaders across the world who are driving meaningful change in the communities. And for Onakoya, it's a powerful acknowledgement of years spent transforming lives through chess.
From the streets of Ikorodu in Lagos to global recognition, his journey has been anything but ordinary. Through his initiative, Chess in Slums Africa, he has empowered thousands of children from undeserved communities with education, mentorship, and opportunities for a better future. It's a story that proves that impact begins with a simple idea and a clear purpose. Mr. Tunde Onakoya now joins us live, of course, not live, of course, but live on Breakfast Extra. Mr. Tunde, thank you so much for joining us. And once again, congratulations on this remarkable achievement. I'd like to find out, first off, how do you feel at this point?
Thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for having me on the show this morning. How do I feel? I guess I'm happy. I think for me, for the longest time, I've had, the privilege of receiving quite a number of awards, and but I always like to say that at the end of the day, I'm just a representation of an entire village. It takes a village of super incredible people who don't get the spotlight. The Chess and Slums team and everyone, who over the years have continued to pour their hearts, their life into this work. So I'm just happy to be a representative of that. But it takes an entire village of people who are equally more deserving, of the award themselves. So I'm happy, and I hope it continues to help us advance the important work that we do.
Now, you often say that chess is more than just a game. Can you just take us through your mind and of how you navigated this, creating chess and making chess become a social transformation in, underserved communities?
Okay. I think chess is a discipline, especially within the context of the work that we do with children. I believe what will be the most important skill of the future will be critical thinking, especially now that, AI, and this emerging technologies are changing the very fabric of our society. I think it is important that we raise children who have the ability to think critically, right? And that is how, we raise a new generation of people who challenge status quo, right? So that, for me, I think chess is a very powerful medium to create an outcome like that. Yes, we work with underserved children, but beyond just caring for them, beyond just charity, right? It's also making sure that we invest thoroughly in their minds, right? So I've always believed, this for the longest time. There's been empirical research over time on how chess builds cognition, grows dendrites on both sides of the brain, and how it improves academic performances as well. So that is a context in which, I'm very, very particular about using it as a tool to empower children, to empower their minds. Because when we do that, then it is the greatest investment we can ever give to our young people.
Now, this award recognizes impact. Can you share some of the most powerful success stories from the children that you have worked with?
I mean, it's been a couple of things, because I also recently just got back from Nairobi and Malawi, and we're expanding across Africa as well. But I think my own personal favorite story to tell was that last year we took 5 of the children from some of the worst slums in Nigeria. We took them to the US, to compete. And, one of them won a gold medal at the ICN Chess Championship in New York. Another one of them won the United Nations, Chess Championship last year, against top diplomats. There was this other girl from an IDP camp in Yola that I met, last 2 years ago. She won a silver medal at the Chess and Community Conference in Georgia. So I think, again, our entire philosophy is to show through the lives of these children, to the world that it's possible to do great things from a small place. And while that talent is universal, opportunity isn't. So Chess and Slums really is committed to be bridging that opportunity gap for the children, and taking them globally last year was such a deep representation of that the world got to see them, beyond the poverty, but to see them for what they actually have the ability to do. And I think is one of the things we're also trying to change, and it inadvertently also challenges the perception, that as Africans, as Nigerians, that we can't show intellectual excellence, and I think it's one of my favorite success stories. We've had many, but taking the kids to America last year was truly special.
Well, I'll come back to the gold medal and, what the children achieved last year. And it was truly amazing based on what you said. But can you share with us what are some of the biggest challenges that the children in the underserved communities face? And how can, initiatives that are like yours help bridge that gap?
So we specifically target street and homeless children, especially in the last 5 years. That has been our focus. And I think one of the hard problems we're really trying to solve is to completely eradicate, this problem, right, of having kids on the streets begging for money. A lot of them are orphans. A lot of them hung up on drugs. We believe that the most vulnerable ones that deserve the most care. And it may not look like it because from a distance, most people are just afraid of them. They don't understand. So it's easy to flag them as good for nothing for society. But I can tell you for a fact that these children represent who we are as a people, and it is what we do for them that defines the morality of our society. So I think for a lot of those children, there's a lot of deep trauma. Of course, poverty underpins everything, and we need to have a sense of duty towards them. So there are many ways, of course, through our resource. One of the things that we're trying to do at Chess and Sons, we want to build the biggest chess campus in the world. So this place is going to become an institution, like a safe haven for children that are neglected and abandoned on the streets. There's a parallel institution right now that gives them a sense of belonging, which is why you see those children that in all those hotspots, Oshodi Underbridge, Mushin, Jakonde, all those little slums where there are area boys, all these boys that embrace them. They give them a sense of belonging, and and they use all of that energy into doing something destructive. And the thing is that for young people, for children, energy cannot be destroyed, right? But it can be channeled into the wrong thing. So you're just taking a lot of that will and putting it into a parallel institute that we're trying to build, an institute that can take at least 2,000 children, school them, nurture them, house them, rehabilitate them. So that is going to be a major legacy project for us. And we believe this will be the only way to solve this complex problem of having children littering the streets, with no ambition, with no sense of possibility. So, and because, again, like I said, it's a lot of deep trauma, it's a lot of drug use, it's a lot of things, right? So there has to be that concerted effort into building something that is an institute. So that is what we're really focused on right now. And that, I think, is the most help that we can give these children right now. And whoever is listening to this, my talent is chess. I'm building this into something that is a social intervention for children. If you have resource, if you have network, whatever privilege that you have, the only way to justify it, right, is by, in any way, do something to look out for these kids, help their situation, including governments as well. So all of this has to come together. So I'm trying to engage the private sector, the public sector, every single person, so we can have a deeper sense of duty towards these children and solve this problem for good.
I must give it to you, Mr. Onakoya. You've done an incredible job with the kids, and I'm hoping that you have the strength to do even more. But when we look at your journey, of course, it has taken you from Lagos to global platforms. Tell us, how important is international recognition in scaling your mission?
Honestly, I'm not so keen on recognition in that sense because someone told me something when he said the gold medal is a wonderful thing, but if you're not enough, without it, you'll never be enough with it. So the international recognition is good. I remember when I got an email from Barcelona, Spain. As a child, I used to think Barcelona was just a football club, but eventually found out that it was a city. So I have had the privilege of traveling to at least 30 countries. I've been awarded in New York, in all of those places. And to me, like I said, it's not really validation in any sense, because the only single metric for validation for me is that we can take the children that we work with from 0 to 1. So so the awards are great, especially because, for Nigeria, we're mostly in the news for the wrong thing. So it is always refreshing to see that, a Nigerian person can represent and be good news from Nigeria, right? I remember when we broke the world record in New York, it was the #1 trending news in the world. We were front page on the New York Times, and all of these things are important to challenge the single stereotype, single story about our people. So I just feel very deeply honored and privileged to be one of the people that can represent the country in a good light. But it doesn't really validate the work that I do, because I only have to have a single metric to measure that, which is, again, like I said, validating in the lives of the children that we're able to take from 0 to 1. And for every award and recognition that we get globally, again, it is me just front facing for an entire village of people behind me that make this work possible. Yeah, so I'm happy and proud, and hopefully, it continues to put us in good light.
Right. Tunde, you've been doing this for a couple of years, and I just wanted to ask, in terms of the children that you mentor and, you shape into, teaching them the chess, what happens? How do you fund them? How do you take care of them? Once you take them out of the street, where do you take them to? And how do you, follow up with them up until they get to the point where, they can become better?
So it's very layered. So we have a multi-pronged approach to the work that we do. So chess is just the simple entry point. It's not the end in itself. Like I've always said, it's a means to several ends: education, technology, opportunity. So we have a three-pronged approach where we go into a new community. We do a bit of a vulnerability assessment to select the children that are most vulnerable and could truly use an opportunity like this. Then we do a pilot phase project for 2 weeks where we teach them intensely every single day for 5 hours. Then we now finally set up either a permanent training center that allows us to take the children that are not a part of that learning community and put them on educational scholarships. So this is how we sort of approach it. Of course, it's very complex. Sometimes it can be very layered, especially when we're working with street children. We have community projects across Africa, in Nairobi, in Kenya, in Burkina Faso, in Ibadan, in all these places, right? So those ones are standard centers. We work with rural schools as well. We work with orphanages. We work with all of these places. But for the street kids, it's very complex, and we need a lot of a series of partnership with the government, because you can't pick up a street kid, for example, and do anything for them without permission from the ministries, right? That's almost like kidnapping if you don't get the required permissions, right, to do that. So that is first essential. And the second thing is partnering with shelter homes. We don't have a home yet, so we partner with shelter homes, that care for these children. So after picking them off the streets, introducing them to chess and to the possibility of their own minds, right, and we go through the rehabilitation process. Then we now partner with shelter homes. There's a shelter home in Ibadan that we partner with. There's another one in Ikorodu called Child Lifeline Initiative. So we put the kids there. Then we now put them on educational scholarship support, where we continue to support their education over time. So at some point, after sort of taking into proper measure, the progress of the child, then we can now think about reintegration back into society. So reintegration can now mean either connecting them to a job or internship opportunity, or connecting them to their families. For example, one of our kids last year went to New York, for a summer internship project. So there are a lot of different things like that we have in place, but the need for every child is always very different, right? And we must adapt our methods, to suit what is most meaningful for that child.
Congratulations once again, Mr. Onakoya, for, of course, setting breaking the ceiling, if you ask me, and ensuring that a lot of Africans are inspired by what you do. But for young Nigerians watching right now that would love to, create an impact, but do not know where to start from, what do you have to tell them?
What I would say is, again, you must believe that it is possible to do great things from a small place. In fact, all great things must start small. If you think of the highest abstractions, the tallest buildings you've ever seen, it all started with a grain of sand. So beginnings, it is the nature of beginnings to be that way, right? It doesn't come from abundance. It cannot come from abundance, right? You build something from a small beginning, and with time and persistence, it becomes great. And to be able to do that, you have to believe that what you have in your hands, is of great significance to the world. For me, I remember when I started and I was like, oh, this gift of trust that I have, I want to use it to do something meaningful in this life. A lot of people was like, that doesn't make sense. Chess is just a game. It's just this. Children in extreme poverty don't need chess. They need food. A lot of that was very discouraging. But then it did not stop me because I had complete faith in my idea and that in my skill, in my ability to use what I have, to affect the world positively. So you must believe that very deeply, before anything else. You must have deep and unwavering faith in your ideas. And maybe the final thing is that you must have a lot of courage as well. I think the world doesn't reward intelligent people. I've always been somewhat of an intellectual myself, and sometimes I end up over-intellectualizing something, that I just need to take action with. And I found that every single time I lean, like I have, like my bias towards action is defined or pursued, I always make much more progress than all of the critical thinking and planning or intellectual thing that goes into any effort. So you must have courage, the courage to pursue what you want and to do it. And another thing is, creating impact doesn't necessarily mean that you should go and start a charity or a nonprofit. That is not true, right? In fact, you can make more impact creating a socially conscious business than even doing a charity, because it is extremely hard to fund ideas like this, where there's almost no financial incentive or reward for it. So whether you're working, whether you're starting a business, whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is, you're more likely to have more impact actually doing that by creating value that people can pay for than even just doing charity. But then remember that you must solve an important problem for society, and you must bridge an important gap for people that have been left or excluded over time. But when you think of it that way, then you understand why your work matters and why you must do it.
Right.
So those would be my advices for young people.
Nice one. Now, Tunde, what does success look like for you in the next few years? I know you mentioned, having institutions and, proper institutions for the kids, but what does success look for you in the next few years and for your movement that you've built so far?
Definitely for the Chess and Slums project is building that institute. Like, that is going to be our greatest legacy. I believe that very strongly, because I believe when we set up this place, we can truly find these children and make them into world-class individuals, that'll be relevant to the world, and to their families as well. This is my life's work, and this is what I would measure ultimately as success for the organization. And for me personally, I guess my definition has changed over time. And for me, I think good success now is that the people that know me best do love and respect me. And I think it's good to have the admiration of the world, but I think good success is when the people that know you best do love you and respect you very deeply. So yeah, that's it for me.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Tunde Onakoya, and once again, congratulations on this global milestone.
Thank you so much for joining.
Appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Of course, it's good to see people like this inspire you every now and then. It tells you that if you can see someone do something like this, that means you can do it as well. We're going to go on a quick break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues. It's time for the headlines. My name is Chiwete Onyema. We begin with breaking developments from Benue State, where all passengers abducted earlier this week have now been successfully rescued. The State Commissioner of Police, Ifeanyi Emenari, confirmed the development in an early Sunday message, stating that the victims are expected to arrive in Makurdi shortly. He said combined security operatives carried out the operation, leading to the rescue of the remaining 13 passengers who were kidnapped on Wednesday night. The incident occurred when gunmen intercepted a Benue Meanwhile, tension is rising in Benue State as suspected armed headers launch an attack on Naka headquarters of Gwa West local government area. Reports indicate that an unconfirmed number of residents have been killed, while several others sustained injuries during the assault. Eyewitnesses describe panic and chaos as gunmen stormed the community, forcing many to flee for safety. Authorities are yet to release an official casualty figure as security agencies move in to contain the situation and restore order. Chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association Lagos State Chapter, Dr. Babajide Saheed, has dismissed claims of his removal from office, describing the move as unconstitutional. He said due process outlined in the association's constitution was not followed. In a statement, the leadership maintained that the alleged action lacks legal and institutional backing. It stated that the chairman remains the duly elected office holder. The association advised members and the public to disregard directives from unauthorized individuals or groups. It added that official communication would continue through recognized channels. The International Law Association has called for the adoption of arbitration as a mechanism to resolving financial disputes in Nigeria. Now, this was during the association's 9th annual conference, which held in Abuja, where it deliberated on several key issues ranging from improving transparency and accountability, adoption of arbitration, promotion of alternate dispute resolution mechanisms, among others. The keynote speakers, while commending Nigeria's new tax law, called for effective implementation, saying that it will block revenue leakages and urged the government to embrace effective dispute resolution mechanisms in the light of improved foreign investments in a bid to support the growth of the nation's economy.
Nigeria has identified the need to block revenue leakages as a priority, and we've had significant developments in this regard, especially with the adoption of the Tax Act. And we think that this conference comes at a timely period whereby we can then see how the implementation of such reforms can accelerate, addressing revenue leakage, promoting financial transparency and accountability in our institutions, and supporting capacity development that will enhance action in this area. So we're very delighted and proud at the ILA, as part of our service to national development, to convene world-class experts and speakers to discuss these issues.
For a very long time, we have strived and we're still striving to make Nigeria an arbitration hub for West Africa. And the reason is because with what the president is currently doing, there's increased foreign direct investment into the country. And once you have FDI inflows into a country, it means there's more commercial activity in that country. Once there's more commercial activity in a country, disputes are inevitable. Now, with the nature of commercial transactions, one of the things we have advocated, which is fast, which is cheap, and which is commercial, is arbitration as a mechanism for resolving commercial disputes.
Meanwhile, Pope Leo XIV has arrived in Angola on the third leg of his African tour, addressing controversies surrounding remarks linked to Donald Trump. The Pope touched down in Luanda from Cameroon, where he concluded his visit with a massive public mass and was welcomed by cheering crowds as he met President João Lourenço. Speaking on board his flight, Leo dismissed claims of a feud with Trump, saying his comments about tyrants were misinterpreted and not directed at the U.S. leader. He stressed that his message remains focused on peace, despite criticism from Trump over his stance on global issues.
As riquezas materiais nas quais, inclusivamente, no vosso país, interesses prepotentes, poemas maus. Quanto sofrimento, quantas mortes, quantas catástrofes sociais e ambientais acarreta esta lógica extrativista. Em todas as partes do mundo, vemos como ela, no fundo, alimenta modelo de desenvolvimento que discrimina e exclui, mas que ainda pretende impor-se como único possível. Angola pode crescer muito se, em primeiro lugar, vós que detendes autoridade no país, acreditardes na multiformidade da sua riqueza. Não temais as divergências, nem extingais as visões dos jovens e os sonhos dos idosos. Sabei, sim, gerir conflitos, transformando-os em caminhos de renovação. Colocai o bem comum acima das partes, não confundindo nunca a vossa parte como todo. Então, a história dar-vos a razão, mesmo que no imediato alguns vos sejam hostis.
We want a quick break, when we return, there's more.
Well, finally, in the last hour of Breakfast Extra Sunday edition, and now we're talking about Nigeria's counter-insurgency strategy, which is once again in focus, as over 700 repentant ex-combatants are set to be reintegrated into society under the federal government de-radicalization program. The initiative, part of Operation Safe Corridor, is designed to rehabilitate and reintegrate former insurgents who have surrendered through psychological support, vocational training, and reorientation programs. In simple terms, over 700 repentant terrorists are ready to be released as free working men in the community they once terrorized.
Now, according to military authorities, the individuals have completed the program and are now considered ready to return to civilian life. Isn't that amazing? Well, this is a move aimed at promoting long-term peace and reducing the number of active fighters. But the policy continues to generate strong debate across the country. We're now joined by Aminu Hayatu, a public affairs analyst and CEO of Mother Earth Foundation. Mr. Hayatu, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayatu, let's start with the fundamentals of this situation. How important is reintegration, part of Nigeria? How is this important to make, part of Nigerians' overall counter-insurgency strategy?
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians. I think it is important to start off with this clarification that reintegration is usually a program that is always a welcome idea. But the question is when and under what circumstance and who is to be reintegrated. It is important in the process of reintegration to differentiate between hardened, those who were found, for example, and convicted and were found guilty of the kind of offense they did. For example, if they are hardened terrorists, that has to be segregated from, ordinary criminals, and so on and so forth. That segregation in the first place is very important because of the kind of experience and the psychological change process that these people must have gone through for years. Some of them, even from childhood, they have been, integrated into this process of terrorism. So it is important when it is time to train them and reintegrate them into society to do this segregation so that it is seen whether it is a good time to bring them back into the fold or they could not still mix up with the remains of the society. And it is very important also to look at other factors, like when they are reintegrated back into the society, what may likely happen. All of these are psychological analysis that are expected to have taken place. Not just, for example, bringing them out at a time when international community is watching Nigeria to see what measures it is taking, so as to confirm that the Nigerian government is not reluctant about, its fight against insurgency and terrorism. But then it is equally also very important to understand the fact that there are insinuations now going on that some of these people who were there, some of them, this is not the first batch. There were some of them that had earlier been reintegrated. And there are insinuations, unconfirmed, that some of them are even so free to join some of our security and paramilitary agencies and institutions, which is also in itself which in itself has its own kind of implication. And all of this is because the way in Nigeria we handle things, I think, is in such a way that it is not well programmed, well planned, well programmed, and is not taken into consideration, the long-term implication of these things. All we need is to do politics with the integration, and then later on what happens, we don't know. When you look at the number of these people that are to be reintegrated, it's a welcome idea that we are having to see that they are repentant. But there are stages that you put them before finally allowing them, to be reintegrated into the civil society, and they are being watched. So it is important we put them in these stages. I have not seen any plan, for example, of their integration to show that, for example, from the time when they were being trained, with the purpose of reintegrating them into the society, whether some of these steps have been, followed in order to achieve the motive for the reintegration. And this sends very, very fearful message to Nigerians that it is possible when they are integrated into society, they will still be used either as informers or, as people who would now come to pose even greater danger to what the society is facing currently. So it's important that Nigerians are still skeptical about this, and from the feelers we are getting, Nigerians are not very comfortable with their integration into the society, just one off like that.
Mr. Aminu, when we look at the programs, programs like Operation Safe Corridor, of course, it focuses on de-radicalization and rehabilitation. How effective have these initiatives been so far, based on your own perspective?
No, the de-radicalization process and the corridor they always mention should have been more transparent than this. Because if it's the accountability, the accountability process need to be very clear to Nigerians so that Nigerians could see at different stages, this is the experience, this is the program they have been placed on, and they have successfully passed through up to the last stage. Because when you say corridor has a beginning, it is a narrow path, and it has a beginning, it has an end. And it has, different locations across it until the end. Unless you clearly show to Nigerians that this is where they started, and this is the process where they followed, and at every stage, these are the checks and balances, these are the measures being taken, and so on. Nigerians would not be convinced that, it is just a process of, training them, preparing them to be reintegrated into the society. And the process is what matters most, because if it is bleak, people do not understand whether really they should feel safe and allow to mingle with them in the society. Because if you look at it, there were times when some of these repentant bandits, terrorists, the insurgents in the past in Boko Haram, that were brought back to some of the communities in Maiduguri. I personally was part of a research that actually got the people of Maiduguri saying that they are not comfortable having these people in their midst. But this is not the first time. There were intermittent programs that happened, and they were, hurriedly rushed back to the society just to show evidence that something is happening and the government is acting on counterinsurgency. And I don't think that reintegrating repentant insurgents into the society is something so simplistic that the government would rush, the program and just show evidence that yes, because 700 is a big number in Nigeria, and they are talking about, people that have been, first of all, even identified, with certain, kind of criminal activity, and they have actually, unleashed terror to the society and have done a lot of, worse things that people with their loved ones, who have lost their loved ones will look at them as these are the people responsible for that. People who have, lost their properties, the people that are displaced, and so on. So a lot of psychological, packages need to be imputed into this with a clear process and transparent, methodology of doing that to showcase to Nigerians that, you carry the civil society along, you carry the civil populace along so that they feel a part of that program that the people are being integrated. So that finally, when they arrive in these societies, people are convinced that they could go about doing their normal activities with them. But as it is now, any slight thing that happens to, the people, any terror unleashed or anything, the suspicion will be going around and you have a very chaotic situation that you cannot even control. Right. And at the end of the day, what assurance do you have that they are not actually going back to where they came from?
Well, Ms. Aitu, you said most of the, concerns from many Nigerians. And, looking at the videos or the pictures of the said repentant terrorists, they look a bit older compared to the videos and pictures of the ones we've seen prior, because it seems that, we've had younger crowds. But let's not digress into that. The question now is, as at the time when this corridor is over and the repentant, terrorists are being put back into the system, you had mentioned that some of them may likely want to join the force. Don't you think it's a risk? Because the force is where, of course, we have plans on how to, safeguard the communities and take care of all the states. If they go into that force, are we not risking having loopholes in our security system where, the terrorists will now have access into secrets of the country, and then, we now expose ourselves to more insecurity and, insurgency?
That's exactly my point. That's exactly my skepticism. And that is why I told you that for that corridor program to happen, it should involve a lot of very transparent processes, including, the clear, even as they are Nigerians and they have the right, to participate in any societal activity, just like any other Nigerians. But there should be a temporary ban, of these repentants to join any form of security, Nigerian security outfit, at least for the meantime. This should be contained, in in the government policy. It should be gazetted so that people, have this confidence in them, and even the security agencies have this confidence that they are not going to be penetrated or experience any form of infiltration. Because we have seen in Somalia, these cases of infiltration where some of those, gunmen who have repented, some of them joined the civil security outfits and they continued to pose a danger to the security in Somalia. And we've seen it also happen in Afghanistan too, and some, other crisis-ridden societies. So it is important that the government should be very clear and decisive about this process of reintegration. And I think only to come out and announce that they are ready to be reintegrated back into the society is not a very wise way of doing things. This should have been a process that Nigerians would have been involved in right from the beginning, and intermittently information coming out and being very transparent and clear about the process so that it doesn't become even a news at the end of the day when they are ready to be reintegrated back into the society.
There's also the issue of justice. Many victims and even communities and, of course, regular Nigerians feel this process may overlook accountability. What's your take on that?
Do you see why I still say the process lacks rigorous and thorough, undertaking? Because these suspicions, these questions of accountability are very important. And that is why you see that the skepticisms that are coming from the civil populace is very serious. If you look at if you read the papers, if you listen to people's opinions over the radio and so on, you see that it is all these questions that people are asking. And people are not sure, and this is the reason why it is important to start the process, to be as a transparent process, so that Nigerians from that, transparent beginning can have the confidence to believe that whatever, follows in the process of training them and finally reintegrating them back into the society is something that Nigerians are a part of, because they are the ones that will be at the receiving end in case anything goes wrong.
Well, Mr. Aminu Hayatu, thank you so much for joining. Of course, like you said, Nigerians are the ones who are on the receiving end of this situation. And I believe that, the government will really look into it, because this integration is not a small talk. This is insecurity and insurgency we're trying to deal with. So I hope and I believe that they'll really plan properly so that the citizens are safe. But thank you so much for joining and having this conversation with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Now let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll have our last conversation inside Breakfast Extra. Stay with us. Welcome back. And our last big story for today, we're talking about the breaking developments from Benue State, where all passengers abducted earlier this week have now been successfully rescued. The State Commissioner of Police, Ifeanyi Emenari, confirmed the development in an early Sunday message, stating that the victims are expected to arrive in Makurdi shortly. He said combined security operatives carried out the operation, leading to the rescue of the remaining 13 passengers who were kidnapped on Wednesday night. The incident occurred when gunmen intercepted a Benue Links transport vehicle and abducted several passengers, including young women and men, believed to be traveling to sit for the ongoing Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination in Otukpo. Police had earlier confirmed the rescue of 5 victims on Friday, leaving 13 still in captivity at the time, before the latest operation secured their release.
Now, concerns over insecurity have once again come to the forefront following the abduction of passengers by gunmen along the Makurdi-Otukpo road in Benue State, even though not yet been released. Initial reports suggested that several of those kidnapped were candidates heading to seek for the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examinations, sparking widespread outrage and concerns across the country.
Now, what remains is clear that this attack highlights ongoing security challenges, particularly along major highways where kidnappings for ransom continue to pose a serious threat. With rescue operations ongoing and families awaiting news, the incident raises urgent questions about safety, especially for young Nigerians traveling for opportunities and examination. And of course, now we're being told that they've been rescued and they're on their way to Makurdi. But we're joined now by Martin Zoho, chairman of the Federal University of Technology, MENA Alumni Association in Benue State, to have this conversation with us. Thank you, Mr. Martin Zoho, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me online.
Yeah, it's good to have you, sir. I'm sure perhaps Queen doesn't know this, and maybe even you, Mr. Zoho, but I'm also an alumni of Federal University of Technology in MENA, so good to have you here, sir. Well, let's start off. Yeah, let's get your reaction first to this incident. What does this latest abduction say about the current security situation in Benue State?
Once again, I want to express my appreciation to the whole team in New Central Television for giving me this privilege to talk or spotlight on the present issues in the state. The news of the abduction of these passengers, I think it happened on Wednesday evening. Most of the passengers in that bus were all going for the UTME exams in Otukpo. And from information we got, there were other candidates who had who had gone to Makurdi for police screening were persons that were abducted. And at the very early times of the abduction, one person was said to have escaped from custody, and he was the only person that was later rescued by some villagers, and he was one who gave a vivid account of what happened on that fateful on that day. I think it happened around 8 p.m. on Wednesday, and it was really, really heartbroken having to see such kind of incident happen under our nose. And what I got to know is that there's an army post just close to where this abduction took place. And one would want to ask why at that very point, when we have our security men close by, it goes to tell you how should I say, how these bandits or evil men are hell-bent on causing chaos in our society. They don't mind whether the securities are around or not. Their own is just to cause terror, mayhem on the peaceful, loving people of a community they go into. So, and then it still goes back to the security agencies. And but all I will still say they're trying their best, and we thank God with the news of the rescue of the remaining 13 passengers who we are yet to see them. And but we believe, since the authorities have come out plainly with such kind of a report, we hope and we want to believe that they turn out to be true, and we'll see these poor Nigerians reuniting with their families.
Situation happened just, few places away from where we have security posts. And now, of course, with immediate effect, we've seen that the remaining people who were missing are now being rescued. Do you say that there's a gap in terms of the security measures that we have? Because how come there was nobody there, if at all there was somebody there? The fact that this is happening close to where we have a security post is showing that there's something missing. Do you agree with that?
I would say there are gaps in the security apparatus in the country. And that's why you see this menaces thing coming on and on, and with no measurate, should I say, procedures or measures to curtail them. Already, you all know that Benue is already a hot bed for these insecurity issues. Just yesterday, we heard about killings in Naka again, neighboring village. Naka is a headquarter of Way West local government, and adjoining villages were attacked. Several people, unconfirmed reports of many lives being wasted, and we are still waiting to get reports on that. And several, it has been like that. And the security apparatus need to rejig the security architect of this country. I know they are trying their best, but then their best is still not good enough. They should try more. You understand? They should be at least a step ahead of these criminals, you understand, in the security architecture of this country. They should try as much as possible to create avenues or apparatus or scenarios where they can easily beat these evil men to their job. If they don't do that, it will seem as if they are not working at all. So please, I'm calling on security, the leaders of the security apparatus in the country, to work extra hard. I know we know they are working, but they should work extra hard to beat these people to their trade, because they are hell-bent to cause insecurity, to keep promoting violence in our communities. And And the citizens are really, really fed up of all these tactics, antics. It's really weighing down on our economy, our social psyche. It is not good at all. So we will, in as much as we want to encourage security authorities to double their efforts, at the same time, we are calling on them to spread their tentacles far beyond what it is expected. You understand? So you can hit these evil personalities unannounced. You understand? So I don't want to dwell much on the security stuff, but just to encourage them and tell them to do more. They should do extra more, because lives being wasted every now and then, it's really, really bad. Thank God for this one, that even though we are yet to see the rescued passengers, but we want to believe that everything they are saying is true. And we pray that our country gets better.
Yeah, Mrs. Zoe, you're right in all that you say.
Now, Mrs. Zoe, I mean, I hear you, of course, based on the fact that you've answered most of our questions, but I also hear the fact where you said the government should do more when it comes to insecurity. I'd love to know exactly how you would want the government to approach things, because looking at it now, it looks as though students are soft targets. I talked about this in my monologue this morning. It's either they're attacked in school or on their way to school or their way to write exams and things like that. So what exactly should the government be doing right now to avoid something like this happening again? Thankfully, the students have been rescued.
You're right. You're saying these evil men or bandits or evil militia men are always targeting students who are soft targets. I wouldn't really know, except the security apparatus study the psyche, the psychology behind this abduction of soft targets. On my own, I wouldn't really know why they go for soft targets. But a lot of opinions, a lot of comments have come up on social media on why these persons are always targeting soft targets like students, because you know a student who is studying or who is about to write an exams, struggling financially to see how to meet up with his or her own needs with respect to going to write exams, and amidst the slim resources he or she might have, and you going after those soft targets, thinking you can get something. I don't know. Maybe their own is to make sure to discredit the government. I don't know, because you keep wondering, why would they do that? Maybe it's possible just to give the government in power bad name, or whatever reasons they might have. It's best known to them. So I don't know. Let the security, all we will need to say is that even the government, if it knows that this is what it entails to police our community, they should work with the locals on intelligence gathering. You understand? Every locality. That's why the issue of state police is very important at this point in time. You understand?
Yeah.
Work with communities. You understand? Anybody that sees anything, you say it out. You understand? There should be office or an office where reports or issues of insecurity or intelligence gathering, should I say, ideas should be reported to.
Mr. Martin Zoho, you have said literally everything that we were hoping to hear. So we appreciate you coming to join us and have this conversation. Of course, it's good news that the remaining victims that were kidnapped have been found and they're heading back home safely. So thank you, Mr. Martin Zoho, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And now we have come to the end of Breakfast Extra for this week.
That's right. We did it, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, Sunday. Saturday and Sunday. But do not forget, of course, to join Joe, Benga, and Olive tomorrow for Breakfast Central. Of course, they start off for 7 a.m. But before that, yeah, before they go, you're going to talk about something?
Your monologue was amazing. I know Sunday is always my favorite because I enjoy the strips so much. Like, I literally dance when I am watching or, you know, having conversation with Mazilo with the strip. And having to do the strip with you today was amazing. So thank you. Yeah,
kudos to actually everybody who put the strips together. The creativity behind the strips is a lot. It's a whole lot, honestly, and I love it.
Well, thank you, viewers, for watching Breakfast Extra Sunday edition. Like Chiwete said, make sure you join Joe, Benga, and Olive for Monday to Friday for Breakfast Central. Bye for now.
Bye.